Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Wannabe Entrepreneur, the podcast about what's really like to bootstrap a company. And today I have another interview. I have Chloe here with me. Hey, Chloe, everything good with you?
Yeah, hi Tiago. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for taking the time. Am I saying your name correctly, by the way? It's just Chloe?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's a very simple name. Very nice. So Chloe is the founder of These Two Shall Grow. It's an agency that Chloe founded and helps her clients both with UX research and to bridge the gap between digital products and their users' well-being. So a very, very interesting topic, especially in today's days with social media and everything. And we'll be discussing all of that. And also learned that she studied digital business and she switched to UX. So this is also really interesting how this change came to be, how Chloe built her company. So this is all the topics we'll be discussing here today. And to kick things off, I would like to ask you, Chloe, to just give a little introduction about yourself. Who is Chloe?
Yeah, I mean your introduction is great. So I'm a UX researcher. I've been for some years now, and I was also a UX designer. I also worked in conversational design, and now I'm making the switch towards more mindful design consulting and digital wellness coaching. So exactly what you said, making well-being and our tech talk to each other and work together.
Mm-hmm. And you studied something different, right?
Yeah, so I studied. The name of the master's is digital business, and when I started working first after the master, I was a web project manager.
Mm-hmm.
So no design at all, but I was really, really interested in UX. And little by little, I made the switch of taking more and more UX design and UX research oriented jobs. And that's how I made the switch towards UX.
And when you got your first jobs, you were working for someone else, right? Or did you
Yeah,
just immediately start?
absolutely.
Okay. Um, how important was that part of actually working for someone else and getting colleagues and getting mentors for this new path that you have now, which is building your own company? Do you think you could have just started building your own company from the start?
Probably not. It was good to get some experience of, being an employee.
Hmm.
Um,
What have you learned?
just workplace politics, kind of. Um,
But you don't need that
and
now, hopefully.
well, sometimes you do.
Okay.
But yeah, I also learned, yeah, some of the management aspects of being a web project manager. So managing the not just the project, but also managing the people, managing a small studio,
Hmm.
um, and seeing how devs work, seeing how designers work. And then when making the switch towards being self-employed, having friends and just people around me who were also self-employed, not in the
Right.
same field, but to whom I could ask questions, whether it's about how to do the paperwork or just in general client relationship. That was also very, very, very valuable.
Mm. So surround yourself with like-minded people, right? People that are going through the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I've been trying to be self-employed for the past 9 months now, and one thing that I've learned is it can be really a lonesome journey. And people that are not entrepreneurs, they probably won't understand your struggles.
Hmm.
So I totally agree. And one of my, I guess, main business now is actually a community for entrepreneurs, and it really helps just to be, because I'm both the founder and the user, right? So it really helps just to chat with them and work with them. So I totally agree with you. But your passion is UX. You didn't like the project management so much, or is just the calling for UX that excites you the most?
Yeah, it was a real calling as soon as I found out what it was and how it worked and how you work in this field, I really wanted to do it. At first, when I started working as a web project manager, I thought, well, that's too late. I didn't study design, so I'm just going to be someone who works with designers instead of being a designer myself.
Hmm. How
No,
old were you?
you're 22, 23. It
22.
is not too late to change fields, please.
Exactly.
Yeah, important lesson there.
Definitely. It's interesting though. You're just 22 and you're thinking that. I mean, why is that? Like, what does that tell us about society, right? That you have to kind of know at 22 what you want to be for the rest of your life. Uh,
Hmm.
what do you think you had this perspective that you couldn't change at first?
Well, I was thinking I did 5 years of school for digital business.
Hmm.
Other people did 5 years of design school. So I'm not going to do another five
Ah,
years now to catch up. So I thought, well, it's too late. But this is very much a discipline that you can teach yourself differently.
how? How differently? So, what's the difference between learning, going through business school and design school?
Well, what I meant in that is that for design or programming, for instance, you can very much find ways to give yourself the skills and still find work without having a traditional diploma. What I did is I just read a lot online, I learned a lot. I did some projects for myself, for friends, hackathons.
Mm,
I did a lot of online courses around UX design, UX research, and that allowed me little by little to also take jobs as a self-employed person that were going more and more towards UX. So it was a transition.
yeah. At the same time, you were having your day-to-day job, right? As a project manager, and at the same time, you're studying and learning about UX. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
exactly. Yeah.
How does one start learning about a topic? Because when you're in school, there are courses, you right? Like everything is planned for you. You can just go there and they say, okay, now you study this, then you study that. But how do you learn a skill or a subject just by yourself? Where did you start it? How did you organize your studies?
I think I just started first reading a lot of articles online and finding the good sources. There's a lot on Medium about UX and design. There's a
Okay.
lot on nngroup.com. Just
Mm-hmm.
finding these sources and then figuring out, like researching for online courses
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay.
seeing what I can do, what is doable next to my full time job.
Right.
And yeah, I made the transition that way.
Mm-hmm. And then you also, I guess, learn from doing certain projects, as you said, like doing hackathons, working for friends. Then you also learn in the way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Okay.
also, very important, seeing how other people who already do UX
Okay.
design work, learning
Mm-hmm.
from them, like being in contact with them, looking at their work, asking questions.
Right. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Get a mentor, basically, right? Some people that
Yeah,
can teach you. Hmm, interesting. Yeah, I just realized that there's something that we didn't speak about, which I think is kind of important for our conversation, which is what is UX design?
you're deciding how something works, basically.
Okay.
It's a vague definition, but there's so much that can go into UX depending on what you're working on. That
Hmm.
yeah, it's really about how it works, and within how it works, what it looks like is important. But
Right.
if you take a more holistic look at UX design, it's how it works.
Hmm. So let's take an example. I am a client, right? And what would the clients when you get a new client, what would they ask you? Like, what material would they give you so that you can start? What do you ask for when you first have a new client?
That really depends on the project.
Okay.
Um,
Do you have like a project in mind that you worked on?
Maybe more for UX research, actually.
Okay.
For UX research, say someone wants to test an interface that they already have.
Right.
So we're going to do user tests. So what I would ask is, we need to figure out who are the type of people who are going to test the interface. So I ask them
Mm,
what their goals are, who their target is, who their users currently are, if they already have some.
mm-hmm.
And then we need to figure out the research questions, which isn't necessarily yet the detailed questions of the interview, but
Right.
rather what they want to find out with the user tests in general.
Mm,
So we want to verify that this is usable, that this other part of the interface is well understood, this and that.
mm,
And
right.
once we have all of that, we're going to be able to flesh out, like I make the interview protocol basically, so all the questions.
Right. How do you get people to interview?
It depends what the goal is and who the target is. So for some clients, they work with a recruitment agency who
Mm-hmm.
is going to take care of recruiting people who match the target.
Right.
For some other clients, they already have a user base, so we're going to contact people within their user base and see who is willing to participate.
Okay. So they
Um,
provide you already with the interviewees, the people that you interview.
Yeah, in general, most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or, yeah, we need to figure out the details together another way, but most of the time, I don't have to, like, it's not going to be, and it shouldn't be just like asking your friends or your family.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because
Yeah.
they are definitely biased.
Yeah, also, and they don't necessarily, like, they're not going to be
The
a
target.
good match necessarily for the target.
Got it. Yeah. How? Where do you do these interviews? Is like, can you do it from your laptop, or do you need to be in the same physical space as the person you're interviewing?
Yeah, it depends on a lot of things. If you are only interviewing people in one city, which is a narrow scope for a user
Mm-hmm.
base. If you have
Mm-hmm.
an online product, there are specific rooms that you can rent if you want to go there with a one-way mirror, so that
Ah,
people can
wow,
observe.
that's cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Like in the police station or something.
yeah. But it really depends on your budget and what you want to do. Most of the times, users are in so many different countries that you have to do either you do what I do most of the times, remote interview on the computer,
Mm-hmm.
or on projects that have big budgets, you can hire user research agencies in those different countries and who speak the language there,
Well,
if you
yeah.
have like really big scale product and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
budget, and they're
Well.
going to conduct, like in country A, you're going to have research agency A who's going to conduct the interviews in language A, and same
Mm-hmm.
in country B, and again in country C. And yeah,
Right.
all of that is going to be translated, and then you can do the analysis from all of that. But
Uh-huh.
that's a completely different scale of budget.
So, how worth it is the investment in the UX research? Because I used to work in Trivago, and we had an in-house team just to do research and all the fancy equipment and so on. And it was I would learn a lot because I did some projects and we did some research. But in the end, a lot of project managers would say that it's not significant, and we are just interviewing a couple of people, 5, 20, 30 people, and they say that it's not enough. It's not enough to get a proper conclusion. Do you get that a lot?
Not so much. So you're not researching for the same thing, whether you're doing quantitative research or qualitative research.
Right. So what is the difference?
Um, Quantitative is going to be survey, large scale research that you're going to do towards, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of people. Again,
Mm-hmm.
depending, it's relative depending with your total user base. And your qualitative research is more used to explain what you get from quantitative research,
Right.
or like quantitative insights. Maybe you have analytics on your site that
Mm-hmm.
allow you to get quantitative
Right.
insights. For qualitative research, you don't need to have as big of a number of interviewees. But it's also true that, say, if you just interview 3 people, it's not going to be that worth it.
Right. So how many? What's the minimum amount of people you need to interview to get some conclusion?
It
conclusions?
depends. So for me, it depends both on your user base and just the number of user journeys that you want to test. Because on
Right.
some big, more complex projects, you're not going to necessarily want to test just one flow, you know.
Hmm.
So if you want to test 3 or 4, then you're going to have to multiply how many you want to test one journey times the number of journey you want to test.
Right. Got it. Do you think it's also important for bootstrappers to do this kind of surveys and or this kind of research for their products?
I think so, yeah. I think you can learn, you can definitely learn from that. I did it once. I worked some years ago. I started making a mobile game.
Okay.
Um,
Cool.
and yeah, I remember I
Called the Flappy
conducted,
Bird. No.
no. But yeah, like just a simple maze game
Yeah.
with different levels. And I also conducted, I think I did around 8 or 10 user interviews from people from all over.
Hmm.
And it was quite fun to set up, to figure out how to set up user interviews remote on a mobile phone in a way that I could see the screen of the phones of my testers in real time.
Oh
That
yeah.
was a whole thing.
Is there a tool for that already?
Yeah, there is. At
Okay.
the time I used, I think it was called TeamViewer.
TeamViewer. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But TeamViewer. Yeah. But then how do you connect with the phones? Or does TeamViewer also work for the phone?
Yeah, it also worked on
Ah.
the phone. If that's,
Cool.
I think that's the tool I used. It was 4 years ago, so I'm not
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
sure anymore.
Hmm.
But yeah.
How do you convince someone to participate in such a study? Like, did you pay them, or how do you convince them?
So in that case, I didn't pay them. If people are really interested in the topic, sometimes they don't need compensation.
Okay.
However, if you're a big company, a company that has more means,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to want to indeed give a retribution for people's time, especially if it's not remote and they have to go somewhere to be interviewed by you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So in that case, there's either like monetary reward, a coupon on something, website, some goodies. It really
Mm-hmm.
depends. Yeah.
Right. Right. Interesting. I definitely agree that doing this kind of research is really important, and even for simple things like landing pages, when I'm constantly trying to update my landing page because as a builder, right, when I make something, I understand it, right, because I made it, but it doesn't mean that others can immediately look at it and understand it. So I totally agree that just by doing these iterations, getting some outside perspectives, you can learn a lot, and it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
how did you do this transition from your job to a full time business owner or freelancer or what you want to call it? But how did it go? Like how was this transition? Like, did you have like a lot of clients before? Did you just do the switch even without making the money? How did that go?
So when I first made the switch from employee to self-employed, I was first still searching for web project management jobs. So I didn't do the administrative switch and the job switch at the same time. So that was easier.
Interesting.
And then when I quit my full-time job as an employee and I started searching for a freelance job, I always thought, well, if I don't have something by that date, I have to
Hmm.
start searching for employee jobs again.
Right. So you
Um,
really had a time there without any income.
yeah, I had money on the side, but I didn't have incoming money.
Okay. Okay. How
And
stressful was that part?
um, it was stressful, but the fact that I had given myself a clear date by which, if I don't have clients by then, I
Hmm.
go back to normal employment, that
Yeah.
was useful to have given myself that limit preemptively.
How long was the runway in terms of time?
Oh, I don't remember. Some months, but I don't remember.
Okay. Because I did the same
Something.
for me, but it's been 9 months. So I was wondering, was it like 2 months, 3 months, 12 months? What was the range? Do you remember?
I think I had at least about 6 months.
6 months. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And something else that was useful is that that was just pure luck, right? But when I was working as an employee, we had a range of clients at my agency.
Mm.
And then to search for freelance work, I signed up on Malt, which is the biggest freelancing platform in France.
Okay.
And one of someone who worked at a company that was our clients when I was working at the agency was also searching for freelancers, and they saw
Right.
me on that platform. They verified that I had indeed worked for them before,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, okay, come in like tomorrow.
Right.
And that was my first client, and that was pure luck. But it was a very big company, but it was pure luck that they were also searching for someone at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we had them as a client and that I knew people there, I could name people, I could name projects that we had done for them. That was really useful.
Yeah. And by the way, that's another perk of working for someone else. At first, right, you build a network, and
Yeah.
and you say it was luck, but it was also network, right? You already met them, and that's also why you were able to get a job with them. What is the big difference from being a freelancer and working for someone else? Because the job was kind of the same, right? So, what were the big differences?
The job wasn't really the same. But the big differences, I think, are there's for sure more uncertainty working for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There is also more flexibility, more
Right.
freedom. Yeah, and there's less security, and you have to balance all of that out.
Right.
And also, there are ways to maximize your chances in a way, like making sure, paying attention to how you present yourself in a way, how you market yourself,
Mm-hmm.
being very proactive in searching for clients.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of
So a
different
lot of
things.
work that you didn't have to do back when you were working for someone else, right? Like the marketing part. I think this is something that all entrepreneurs, when they first started, are not expecting that marketing would take such a portion of their lives, especially in the beginning, to get the first clients. Was that
Yeah.
okay for you, or did you enjoy it, uh, or was it a struggle?
It was something to learn for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was okay. I mean, it's part of the. If you want to be self-employed, it's part of the game.
Right.
Okay, just
Right.
like I'm like just okay, accept it and move on.
Mm-hmm. And one thing you just also mentioned that there's much more uncertainty, which it's can be really hard to deal with for some people. But I was reading some of your interviews here in a blog post, and you described your routine, and I was like, wow, this routine, it's so organized. So at least when I read it, you said that you wake up at 7 a.m., which for me it's amazing, and then you work, and then you go to the gym, and then you cook healthy food. So it's such a structured routine. Like for me, I cannot understand. Like I don't even know what time I'm going to wake up tomorrow. Does this help to deal with this uncertainty?
um, so for me, it's more than when the uncertainty is too high, then all of your habits start falling apart. And
Right.
so for me, that's why it's important to have strong and healthy habits in place.
Okay. Makes sense.
So I don't still wake up at 7 a.m. every day, not at all. But when I can, yeah, it helps me
Okay.
because I have noticed that for how I work, it's useful for me to start the day early, to go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. All
Hmm.
of these things that I have noticed are useful to me. So
Right.
if I can, if I'm in a period where I can afford to have that in place, then I go for
Right.
it.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask. Do you keep these habits when you are in a very stressful period trying to find clients, or do you just drop these habits while you're trying to figure things out?
If it's really, 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 really stressful, like the most stressful it's been,
Hmm.
Usually it's very reduced. So instead, I would go to the gym once or twice per week.
Okay, but you
And
try to keep
yeah,
some physical activity and so on, right?
yes, because it's so beneficial.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah,
To keep
yeah,
your mind sane, you need to also to keep your body sane, right? So I think that's definitely true. Um,
yeah. What do you do for exercise?
yeah, that's why I'm asking because I've kind of dropped a lot of my exercise now. Also because I used to live in Germany and now I moved back to Portugal, and you need to some time to settle and find places where you can do sports and so on. Uh, so now I'm trying to go back and do. I don't like gym, so like I'm trying to find some like physical sports, like maybe some martial arts. I like playing volleyball, so I'm trying to set up everything, because you need to have a routine. But it's definitely a struggle because that plus being an entrepreneur and only thinking about your project can be really really tough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the same for me. I've just arrived in Berlin 10 days ago.
10 days. Okay.
Yeah, and so I have found a gym. I've signed up, but because there's work and there's getting settled and there's administrative paperwork to do, and soon I'm gonna start flat hunting as well.
Oh, that's
So
that's hard task in Germany.
yeah. So I don't like, and there's no point in blaming yourself if you can have as strong of a routine in those moments because
Hmm.
it's kind of normal. If you can,
Yeah.
it's great. If you can't, okay, it's fine. Like, you know why, and you know that as soon as you're going to have a more stable environment and life, then you're going to be able to go back to the gym.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. I think it still should be somehow a priority, something that you keep in mind. Otherwise, you might forget, and it's spend long long time without moving from your chair, right? Especially because as a developer or entrepreneur, I'm always sitting down working from home. So I think it's
mhm.
it's also really important. um you you started getting more clients, I guess, and then you decided to do the transition to the UX part, right? The
Mhm.
UX research. um was it easy for you to price, like, or to get confidence to get these new gigs as a UX researcher? Because, or at least tell me about the first one, right? So I know that you had a lot of gigs with some of your friends and hackathons, pro bono, let's say. But the first
Mhm.
paying client, how did it feel?
So yeah, pricing myself, I was definitely pricing myself low, in part because it's true that I didn't have that much experience as a UX researcher, and in part because I really, really wanted the job,
Mhm.
which isn't necessarily a good way to do it because then you find clients who prefer you pricing higher because then they have more trust in the quality of your work.
Right.
But given the little experience I had at the time, I couldn't really, there was no sense in me doing that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the first job is the most difficult one to get, and once you have that, you can show that, and you no longer have people who tell you, but you have zero experience. You need to
Right.
have something that you can show.
Okay. So it's okay to maybe get a bit underpaid in the first gig because you are getting a lot of experience and reputation that then you can just use to get other gigs, right?
I don't know if it's my place to say whether it's okay or not, but that's what I did.
Yeah. At least it worked for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So I also wanted to chat a little bit about the well-being part. I think there's still obviously a lot to learn from your freelancing journey, but since we are a little bit short on time, um, I find it this super interesting, right? Like in this world with social media, with people living in their phones, and measuring themselves against the whole world with unfair filters and so on, well-being is becoming something crucial for people, for makers, for digital makers. Where did this interest for that particular field of UX came to be for you?
I think there are two things. On one side, I kind of noticed the consequences on myself and on the people around me of products that weren't um, necessarily designed for well being or designed with well being in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the second aspect is that working myself in tech and in UX, I could notice the design patterns, the mechanisms behind all of that, and I could see how it could be designed differently.
Okay. Can you give an example of the products that you noticed were not very healthy for you and the ones around you?
Yeah, super simple example. Around 2014, 2015, I was using Instagram. I was posting photos there and using it really to grow my account. And I was doing kind of abstract, surreal photography.
Mm-hmm.
And it started getting an obligation for me more than something that I was enjoying.
Right.
So I was growing the account to 1.5K, 2K followers, and I was really enjoying the taking photos part. But
Mm-hmm.
then at some point, it became a task that I have to do daily.
Right.
And yeah, that's the fact that you're measuring something, and Instagram in particular has a heavy impact on self-esteem and body image. So this isn't
Yeah. Yeah.
necessarily about body image or self-esteem, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole competition aspect of
Definitely.
this. There's a whole hormonal aspect as well, because you get drive, you get motivation, so
Mm-hmm.
it plays with your dopamine, but you also have the competition aspect, whether it's with yourself or with others.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, like, this tool is put out in the world, but you don't give people neither the ways to use it in a way that they really understand how it works on their brain and how it affects their brain,
Mm-hmm.
nor like just ways to use it that is going to be beneficial for them. Like, don't get sucked in the trap. So at the time, for instance, you didn't even have the thing that when you keep scrolling on Instagram, you have a message saying, oh, you've caught up with all of your posts and
Right.
you're done and you can stop to keep
You had
scrolling.
the
There
infinity
wasn't.
scroll. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't have any mechanisms like that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And that's the you are all caught up mechanism is already an effort to be more for a better well-being. Is that I never noticed that. I never thought of that actually. But yeah, now you have that. Interesting.
Yeah, now you have that. And it's good, but there is still more work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still, like, recently research that found the impact on Instagram, the impact of Instagram, especially on young people, and even more especially on girls,
Mm-hmm.
for everything again around, yeah, self-esteem,
Self-image and
body
everything. Mm-hmm.
image. And then you have all the things with filters
Mm-hmm.
that make you look something completely different.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a I can talk about it for too long, so I'm not going to
Yeah.
expand more, but yeah.
No, I love it. I love the topic. One thing that I just well, I guess now when I use social media is mostly for my projects. Obviously, more in my I guess early 20s or teenage years, Facebook and all of that. I used to use it more in a social way. But even as you mentioned, as a for a business, right? You want to grow it. You want to get more followers. But then you have the algorithm, and the algorithm, it's kind of this evil entity that makes you work every day and show up every day and always create content and content that people like. Otherwise, they will kind of cap your visibility. But in the same time, that's what makes money to these platforms, right? So that's what I find really interesting, which is when some client comes to you and asks, Chloe, I want to improve the well-being, do they realize that they probably will have to make less money and compromise their revenue?
I haven't had any clients who had mechanisms like that. So
But in a more general aspect, like I remember, for instance, when I was working for Trivago, we were always measuring the clicks, right? So let's change the button, the color of this button, and let's see if it improves. And improves 0.1%. Great. I guess for Facebook, for Twitter, I don't know. You probably have an opinion on how it will be the future of these platforms. Will they cap their money, cap their revenue towards a better well-being, or is there a need for external forces like a police of social media to come and say no, you cannot do that, uh, or some kind of regulation? What do you think the future of social media will be in that sense?
Well, that's hard to tell. There is like some tech regulation. Um, I think the more promising path that we see so far is that more and more people are becoming aware of the potential dangers of social media.
Mm-hmm.
And they either adapt their behavior or they demand something different from the companies behind these products. Yeah, and also, all the scandals, I'm talking about that again, but the scandals of when it was made very apparent that Instagram themselves were aware that they were having such a disastrous impact on
Right.
young girls. That also puts pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping, I don't think that companies would necessarily go towards well-being out of their own sheer volition, but maybe
Okay.
from raising awareness and pressure. I think that's how it's more likely that we're
Mm-hmm.
going to go towards these considerations.
Do you see that more and more clients are coming to you mostly for these topics, so to get some help on UX well-being design?
I'm still mostly working with clients for UX research and a little bit for coaching.
Okay.
So I can't really tell you about that
Mm-hmm.
yet. Hopefully, let's say if we have another interview 1 year from now, I
Yeah,
can tell you. But
because your goal is to focus more in that area, right?
yeah, design for well-being for sure, and also digital wellness directly in being a coach and helping people with their digital life.
Ah, so like normal people, that don't have a business, you just help them to get rid of their, I guess, Instagram addiction or Twitter addiction. That's something you do as well.
Things like that, yeah. So I've started a training for digital wellness coaching that
Mm-hmm.
I started doing in September, and I'm gonna finish it in end of April, so a month and a half from now.
Right.
And yeah, it's about coaching for digital well-being. So I've had a few clients for that already, and for now I've kind of paused it, and I'm going to resume in a month or so. But right now I'm doing the move to
It's so
Berlin and all of
interesting.
that, so it's not a
Mm-hmm.
priority.
Yeah. So, as the last question for you, I wanted to ask if there are a lot of bootstrappers and making makers building their products that are listening to this podcast, and what are your tips for someone that wants to build a digital product that is still balanced and doesn't affect that much the well-being of their users?
Good question. The first thing that comes to mind is don't use dark patterns. Don't use design techniques that are deceiving the user.
Hmm.
Don't use addictive patterns. Don't use, fake senses of urgency saying you have 3 days left to use this offer when it's fake, or you have 2 items left in stock when it's fake.
Mm-hmm.
Be very transparent in your copywriting. Yeah, be clear. Don't guilt users who want to unsubscribe. Don't make it complicated for them to unsubscribe. Yeah, all of that. And if you're in doubt, just ask around and do some research, like do some user research.
Yeah, great tips. As I think that it was a motto in Google: "Don't be evil."
Yeah,
Right? I know that you want to have money. I know that you want to get clients, but tricking them is not the way. Right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Thank you so much, Chloe, for taking your time and sharing. your journey here with the Wannabe Entrepreneurs was really a pleasure. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will share your Twitter, your newsletter, and your website in the show notes. And for the listeners, if you like this kind of content and you want to learn more from other entrepreneurs, their journeys and their paths, you can just go to wannabe-entrepreneur.com, and there are a lot of interviews for you. This was another Wannabe Entrepreneur. See you next time.